Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Jack Tracy. I'm from the UK. I'm a white male, ginger hair, glasses, and a beard. And today we have got the January edition of the Azure Landing Zones External Community Call. We have an absolutely packed agenda this morning, everyone, just to pre-warn you. So we are likely to run over, and that's absolutely fine because it's recorded and put on YouTube. So if you do have to drop out at any time, feel free, and you can catch the recording on YouTube that we'll post at some point later this afternoon when I get around to it. Just as a nice reminder, this meeting is recorded, and obviously, as you being attendees of this meeting, your name or email addresses may be visible to other attendees because they're part of the same meeting, and also your faces may be visible or names may be visible in the recording. So if you don't agree to any of those things, please drop off now. Please catch up on the recording. But if not, we're grateful to have you here. Um, a quick reminder of our Azure Landing Zones notification sign up. So we don't use this terribly often, so it's not a spamming list, don't worry. But if you would like to get access to some polls that we maybe send out occasionally or notifications about bigger things that we're going on, this is a great place to come and sign up. So that's aka.ms/ALZ/notifications/sign up or scan the QR code here. And obviously you can opt out using the link below, which is just slash opt out at the end instead of sign up. But yeah, please do sign up. We do send out things occasionally and we promise not to spam you. And as always, we really love the engagement from the community. So we have got a lot of stuff today, so it's unlikely we're going to get into an open Q&A. But please do use the Q&A feature in the meeting. We've got the whole team pretty much here that can answer questions, and we'll look at those as we go through. Or feel free to use the chat. But the Q&A is an easier way of us not missing your question. So if it is a question, make sure you put it in Q&A, and it's easy for us to find. As you can see, these are just the section headings, so we have a very busy agenda. So I'm going to start rattling through some of this and getting on with it. So firstly, is a nice little reminder, if any of you that are newer to ALZ, if you're wondering, hey, what's the official Azure Landing Zones implementation options, or what are the vetted application landing zone accelerators for things like AVS, AVD, SAP, AKS, all of those sort of things, then please head over to aka.ms/ALZ/AAC for Azure Architecture Center. And this page we list as sort of like a glossary of all of the approved and vetted accelerators and tools that we are aware of and have checked over, and we're happy for you to use to either deploy, manage, operate ALZ, or put into your application landing zones as well. So just a friendly reminder there. And yeah, Paul makes a great point. All of these links are clickable, so feel free to click on the links, but you can also catch them afterwards as well. We'll share the deck. We'll also our roadmap, so we don't put absolutely everything we're working on here because there's an awful lot. I think me and Paul have nightmares about how many features we are on our backlog, but the big ticket items and the ones that we think most of the people in the community will care about and want to know what we're up to, we post on our roadmap. So if you head over to aka.ms/ALZ/roadmap, you'll find everything that's going on there and also see what our latest updates are. So click on each of the cards and you'll find the latest updates from us. We also have a what's new page that we frequently update with all the releases that are going on to policy and the portal and other bits and pieces around ALZ. So if you head over to aka.ms/ALZ/what's new, it's a really good place just to keep checking in on what's going on and what's changing. And we're obviously going to talk about a lot of that stuff today as well. And the CAF also have implemented a WAF new, so pretty much inspired from what we did, I like to think. But they have now also implemented a What's New page for the Cloud Adoption Framework. So if you click on the link at the top, you'll be able to see what's going on there, and it'll also show you some of the updates to ALZ documents that are in the Cloud Adoption Framework as well that are going on in there. So another place to keep track of. And whilst we're on the topic of documentation, we sort of shared a brief look into the future last time we met, which was we're thinking about moving a lot of our documentation not away from CAF, that's still going to stay in the Cloud Adoption Framework and the Learn platform, but all of the more technical implementation details and configuration details, and maybe some of our wiki guidance into a new static website built on Hugo in GitHub Pages for a better browsing experience and more functionality for you as consumers. And it looked like this when we shared it because we were only just thinking about it. But actually, it's now evolved into this, and Jared and Matt are going to talk way more about this later with the Terraform announcements. But just to give you a heads up, this now exists, and the short link that we're using is aka.ms/alz/tech docs. It is by no means complete and got all of our stuff in it yet. It's got a lot of the new Terraform and or all of the accelerator stuff in. Jared and Matt will go into that later. But it is certainly going to be the future of where things go. And just to give you a flavor of that, myself and Paul put this slide whiteboard together a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when we were saying like, okay, what docs have we got and where do they exist? And I think we were a little bit taken back by, okay, we got a lot of documentation in a lot of places. So each of these boxes has documentation that relates to ALZ in some way in it. And we were like, okay, maybe this isn't a great experience for our consumers and having to find all of these different places. So we then, did really high level technical drawings to go, right, where do we want to put all this stuff in the future? Like, where do we want to collapse it all into? And effectively, we came out with it's going to still stay in the architecture center, CAF ready, and also the tech doc site. So that's where we're sort of starting to think that will remain. The library will also remain on its own, but we'll talk about that, or Matt will talk about that a little bit later. So over time, this is certainly what you're going to see. A lot of documentation move out of the individual repos and moving towards a more centralized site. So just sort of a heads up there for you. And we also had some asks from the community, and I think they're really important to get out up front and get them done at the beginning so that everybody gets a chance to hear them. So these were the two that were posted when I built this deck yesterday. I am aware that one was built added this morning. Hopefully you'll get the answers throughout today because a lot of the things you asked are in today's topics as well. So one of them is we really love a deep dive on the Azure Landing Zones library. Now, some of you might not even know what the library is, and you'll learn more about that today. But this one's quite an in-depth one, and it probably deserves its own session on its own. So myself, Matt, and Jared have already discussed that we're going to be starting a little YouTube mini-series to cover some of the more advanced details of the new Terraform configuration, which the library forms part of. So we're not going to be covering that in much depth today, but we're going to be doing a very separate like short videos on that to help you understand how it's all built. So look out for that probably towards the tail end of February because we got a bigger internal event coming up in the start of February. So a lot of us are out of the office. And then the other one was how can we give you recommendations on shared resources such as app gateways, AKS clusters, DevOps agents when following the CAF guidance and guidelines? And this is the age-old question of should we centralize application gateways or should we keep them decentralized? And to help answer this, I actually dug out some slides that I built a very long time ago, but I don't think I've shared in this form. So we've got sort of two approaches here. And as you'll see, that didn't move in the way I wanted it to. There's the decentralized approach, which is in this model, as per our recommendations in our guidance, all of those shared resources that we would talk about, like app gateways, front doors, WAFs, maybe even APIMs, would live decentralized in the application team subscription. And the reason we promote this one most of the time for most customers is it gives the application teams full control of their application and they don't have to fire off tickets or put in PRs to other repos and then build this complex change orchestration to roll out a change to their application. They're in control of all of their resources. But the nice thing of this is that you don't run into noisy neighbor issues, right? Some of these resources, even though they scale and they can grow massively, if you talk to the application gateway product group, they'll also advocate for this as well, like have one per application or one per group of closely coupled applications that share the same team managing all the lifecycle. Because what you don't want is one other application hammering your app gateway because it's got a busy traffic surge and then it absolutely impacting all of your other applications that exist through that same app gateway that aren't experiencing the same traffic surge, right? That typical noisy neighbor pattern. And we have seen customers run into that and it's very painful because generally when it happens, it's a big event like a Black Friday or, sales or anything like that. So really do promote this model in the most cases. However, we understand that some people want to change it because of cost and control, and a lot of this depends on your operating model. So we do sometimes see a centralized model where people want to put it in the connectivity subscription, and I'm not really we're not really a big fan of this. Yeah, okay, it saves you cost, but it also runs the risk of running into noisy neighbor issues. It makes your change and application teams orchestration and like code promotion and changing their application processes a lot more difficult, because typically they won't have access to the connectivity subscription, and that'll be heavily gated. So this one can work, but it needs some very strict rules and roles and responsibilities and rules of engagement built between the team that owns the connectivity subscription and those resources, and also the application team. So, like, if the application team needs something doing, it doesn't take 6 weeks to get it done. It's very well written, and like this is how it will happen, and it will happen within a certain SLA, like 2 days, 3 days, whatever. Um, so that's one model. And the other model, which I think we also see some customers roll out when my slides do decide to click forward, is this model where actually you treat the shared resources that we're talking about here, like the app gateway, the front doors, APIMs, WAFs, those sort of things, as a separate landing zone subscription that's managed by a team. So almost there's a team that managed it as a service and deliver it to the business. So you might have an APIM team inside your organization that manage all the APIs and the API management across the whole organization. And therefore, they're providing that as a service to the rest of the application teams. It's away from potentially the platform team. It might be a subsection of the platform team providing this as a service. But again, really tight controls defined around who can access it, how people engage with that team, how people can make updates, and all of those things. So, really to say, we do promote the first model, which is the decentralized one, keeping it with the applications by default, and that's what most of the product groups will also recommend for their products. If you do have cost concerns, you really have to go on this journey of, is it the right fit for me? And does our operating model fit the process of having it centralized and not creating a ticket overload for any particular team and therefore slowing everybody down? So lots of options there. It very much does depend, but if you were to put, hold me at gunpoint and say, which one do we pick? I'm definitely going to say go decentralized. So hopefully that helps answer your questions. Happy to carry on the discussions in the chat or in GitHub issues. But yeah, hopefully that answers that one. And also a very quick call out for some of those more platform based central resources, like you may have an image gallery that the platform team create and manage, or you may have some functions that the platform team deliver as a service, like they host a mini application to do some RBAC automation or whatever for application teams. Don't forget, we've got this new box down here that's existed for a little while, which is showing that platform teams applications, their subscription should live beneath landing zones and corp, right? They're not subject to being avoiding all the other policies. The platform subscriptions serve a certain purpose, but if it's more of an application that's supporting the platform, they should definitely be governed by the same platform controls as everybody else, so they're not exempt from them. So do go and check out the new ALZ diagram, and you can see all this, and it's on the Visio as well. And with that, you'll be pleased to hear that I'm not going to be talking anymore for a while. And I'm going to hand over to the rest of the team. So first up, we've got Sasha to talk about our policy refresh. So Sasha, over to you, buddy.
Yes, good day, everyone. I'll try and keep it short. We've had a couple of interesting updates. Let's see if I can. There we go. Next slide. On the policy front, we did miss our commitment for Q2 refresh a little bit for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we had the festive season, and with the end of freeze for Azure, a whole bunch of patches went out that impacted us. So we've been working with the product groups to get those remediated, but everything's great. And as of late last night, thank you, Jack, we've merged policy refresh into the main branch, so it's ready to be consumed by everyone. As we've also promised, in terms of breaking changes, we will do this every half year. This was the window to introduce a breaking change, but we've only got a really small one. It doesn't actually need to be implemented. It's just a hygiene thing. One of our initiatives, the Encrypt Transit initiative, had two assignments of the same policy in there. So we've just removed one of those assignments. And with that, obviously, we've removed one parameter, and hence it's a breaking change. The big work that we did in the last quarter was adopt policy versioning. What that really means is that in all of the initiatives that we use in ALZ, as well as any policies that we assign directly that are built in. So in the initiatives, if we are referring to a built-in policy, or if we are assigning a built-in policy or initiative, we are now pinning to the current major version, right? And the reason we're doing this is because major versions are intended to introduce breaking changes. If we don't pin it and they go and update one of the initiatives that we're using, deployments will fail, remediations will fail. We're going to have a lot of issues. So we're now in control of the version of the policy that has been tested and validated and confirmed to work well. So that's all done. We're covering that. There've been a couple of general fixes, again, always refer to ALZ What's New, as linked above. And we've also accommodated some community requests. So there was quite a lot of uh, demand, I would say, for a policy that allows you to audit for mandatory tags. And yes, there is a built-in policy that allows you to check for a tag, but now we've got a policy where you can provide an array of tags that have to be on every resource group or resource, your choice. There's two policies. For example, environment, cost center, business unit, whatever your customers are using or you guys are using as mandatory audit tags, you can now audit for those tags. So you just pass the array of those tags in, and voila. We don't assign this by default because obviously we don't know what your tags are. So just be aware of that. It is there and available to be assigned. The other major focus or a lot of energy went into updating the ALZ portal experience, right? And I know a lot of folks here are more interested on the Terraform and the Bicep side, but believe it or not, the ALZ portal gets used quite a lot. We've drastically enhanced the deployment consistency and reliability. And to do that, now we make sure that we enable all the resource providers that are required for ALZ out of the box. So if you've got a greenfield brand new tenant, whatever, and you run ALZ, you're not going to have any more of these issues where resource providers are missing or whatever, because we'll go and register all the resource providers for you up front. We also have changed the way that we wait. So before you'll have seen many wait steps, right? That we were basically running empty ARM deployments. But the ARM team have actually made that no longer effective because they're drastically improving the performance and the speed of the ARM engine. And we couldn't delay it long enough for things to succeed. So we've actually implemented a PowerShell sleep. And we've got a far more consistent and stable deployment as a result. Part of the reason we also had to do this is we needed to do something quite unique to support Azure Virtual Network Manager, which you can now deploy. There's a new feature. It's a preview feature. If you're deploying either a hub and spoke network or an NVA network, you'll see there's a tick box now where you can choose to deploy Azure Virtual Network Manager. In order to support the scope that we're applying that at, we had to register the network resource provider, so Microsoft.network, on the management group. And believe it or not, that's not really simple. The documentation is extremely well hidden. In any case, we've gotten it all working. So what we're doing with Azure Virtual Network Manager today is enabling security admin rules. And by default, in there, we're blocking high-risk ports from the internet. That's like 3389, 22, 25, all the well-known high-risk ports, 425, etc. Some other things we're obviously enhancing and working with our colleagues for AI ready, right? So all the artificial intelligence tooling and guardrails that we're providing under the workload specific compliance section. Again, feedback from the field and from our customers was the default setting where we deny all the not great practices was a challenge and was blocking adoption. So we've now added the audit only option for all of the initiatives. And we're enabling that through the enforcement mode, right? So if you say audit only, then we'll do not enforce those policies. which effectively means it'll audit, it won't deny anything. And this allows your customers to go in, remediate resources, check compliance, and match it to what the expectation is. And then once you've remediated your environment, your compliance is looking good, you can flip the enforcement mode back to enforce, or it's called default in the portal, but enforce, right? And that means then subsequent deployments will be denied. So that's the major news for me on the portal side. And I'm going to hand over to Bruno.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Bruno Gabrielli. I am the one with the blue and green hoodie, a little beard, and no hair. And I'm also wearing it in the picture. Okay, so let's go to some Amba ALZ pattern update here. We got one of the biggest improvement and update that we went to is on the Amba ALZ portal accelerator that moved from preview to GA. Together with this, and you have the announcement link in the slide, together with this, we basically update the portal deployment to use the latest Amba ALZ release. We included an easy filtering of management group and subscription from the list together with the search field, so you can refine your search in the list and pick up the item that really is in line with the scope of application. You can also select what to enable first before getting the request to specify the management group. And if you don't need, for instance, the enable Amba identity, like in the picture, well, you will not get any request to specify the identity management group. So the list here will only be populated with the management group names that you only want to enable initiative for. We also created an Amba survey that we strongly encourage you to fill it in, because we are looking to your suggestion and improvements. We fixed 11 bugs. Last one was a breaking change happening on the API. We fixed it pretty much immediately. We also improved the maintenance of the robustness and the consolidation of the maintenance and remediation script. Now they are consolidating using a similar approach and more robust. And what we're planning to work in the next period is some new alerts, for instance, for application inside. Sorry, what we got are some new alerts for the application inside delete and the throttling limit, as well as some routes delete and route table delete, together with the recovery vault ASR health monitoring. Together with this, we also got an improvement on the alert processing rule. This is now more flexible. It'll allow you to create more than one alert processing rule just by rerunning modifying the template, rerunning the remediation, and you will be creating basically a second one, which is using a progress number by which you can use different action group as well. We also assigned the Azure and hybrid VM policies initiative to platform MG in order to cover virtual machine, which might be in the connectivity management group, for instance. Together with this, we also made lots of documentation improvement to enhance clarity, navigation, and to document the new scenarios, new feature, to better document what was there. As you can see here, this is the classic structure that you have been using so far. You already went through the restructure of the ALZ of the landing zone initiative. Now we also have this VM initiative and hybrid compute applied to platform, which will basically turn into being these two applied to identity, management, and connectivity. Talking about the roadmap, what we are thinking about working next period is quarter alerts, Amba integration for ALZ Bicep and Terraform, adding support for customer managed key for log alert storage, enabling logical volume exclusion for disk alerts, and adding more alerts about Azure Monitor Ingestion Limit or new resources like Virtual App, P2S VPN gateways, route tables, and again, additional documentation, for instance, for resource group, management group, or subscription exemption from policy assignment. And with that, I think I can safely and quickly hand over to Safe.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's go to the next slide. So continuing the policy discussion, we're going to talk about a change to the Azure Governance Visualizer that we're going to launch very, very soon that would help you with keeping up to date with the latest policy updates that we do. So as you've seen, the policy refresh that we've done have a lot of changes, a lot of updates, a lot of cool stuff. So the main challenge that we're trying to address here is really how can you look at your current Azure Landing Zone deployment and understand what you're missing from the latest policy assignments and the latest policy updates that we've released. So if we can go to the next slide. Let me try to take control, maybe.
I move it for you, but if you take control, it's okay.
Yep, thank you. So if you're not familiar with the Azure Governance Visualizer, it's a really cool tool that allows you to visualize your whole Azure environment in terms of role assignments, policy assignments, a lot of insights in terms of RBAC, cost allocation, a lot of very cool stuff. So what we're doing here is we're adding a new capability called the ALZ Policy Assignments Checker. And what this capability is going to do is it's going to go through your management group hierarchy, your Azure Landing Zone management group hierarchy to be specific. And then it's going to compare with the latest release of Azure policy, and then it's going to show you all of the missing policy assignments that you have across your management group hierarchy. So as you can see from this screenshot, I'm missing a couple of policies. So everything that is shown here is missing in my environment. So I can easily understand what I need to do. And we've added also a lot of supporting links. So if you find a new policy assignment that you're missing, you can click on it and it's going to point you to the Azure Landing Zone library so that you can see actually what this policy assignment is all about. What does it do? What are the parameters, et cetera, et cetera. So you can inspect that and then decide how you can move forward to keep up to date. We also have additional links per policy where you can go also to the Azure Policy Advertiser, which is another cool tool that also gives more visual information around the Azure policies that are available as part of Azure Landing Zones. So this feature is coming very soon. We're going to release a blog post to understand how to use it and give like a step-by-step on how to use this feature. So stay tuned on the on tech community when we announce this post. Thank you. I'll hand over to Matt and Jared for Terraform updates.
Cool. Right. Excuse me. I'll kick this off. My name is Matt. I am British, 191 tall, and graying and balding. Okay, so I'm going to take control of these slides. I'm going to talk to you about recent updates that we've made in ALZ Terraform. Okay, so I've just clicked the take control button and I can't see the slides anymore. So I think I've got a bit of a technical glitch. Can anyone else still see them?
Yeah, I can still see them, Matt.
Okay, this is going to be interesting because I cannot.
Here you go. Let me take control and let me see if you can steal it back.
Yeah, all right, thanks. Yeah, I can see them now. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just shout next slide if that's okay.
Yeah, fine. I can be your PA, no worries.
Okay, cool. So let's crack on. So yeah, new branding. You might hear this. Essentially, what we're doing is marrying up two large solution engineering projects that we have. One of them being Azure Verified Modules, one of them being Azure Landing Zones. And this is the kind of new branding that we have. It's still Azure Landing Zones. What we're trying to do is differentiate between platform landing zones and application landing zones. So the release that we've just made is the platform landing zones component, which is the evolution and upgrade essentially of the CAF Enterprise Scale module. There is much more to come in our backlog for application landing zones. We recognize that we've got the subscription vending thing already there. We recognize that actually deploying meaningful application landing zones, there is much more than just deploying a subscription and maybe some peering and stuff. So watch this space. We're kind of eyeing up end of our financial year probably by the time we've got anything done on that. But yeah, that's why we've got this branding, because there's some application landing zone stuff coming. So if we could have the next one, please. So the Azure Verified Modules composition, we actually showed this slide last time, but just as a little refresh, we have the AVM pattern module for Azure landing zones, which does management groups policy, role definitions, things like that. Currently, it uses a new provider that we've written as well. We've then got the accompanying management module, which does log analytics. And then we've got the networking options. So you've got the virtual WAN pattern module, the hub and spoke pattern module with the optional VNet gateway, and also Jack's private DNS zones module. So yeah, that's essentially what we've got. And the reason that we've done this, if we go to the next one, please, is essentially because that's what our large customers have asked for, right? They wanted a more modular approach. Jared, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Jared. I'm white, British. I've got some glasses on. I've got very bald head and a slight beard, and I'm wearing a blue Microsoft t-shirt. Yeah, so the accelerator is the recommended approach, right? If you want an easy experience for deploying the platform landing zone, then the ALZ IAC accelerator, which also supports Bicep, and AVM is coming to Bicep soon as well, so that's good news. But basically, it requires a couple of configuration files. We have a PowerShell module that orchestrates it, and then we spit out basically a composed together module with everything that Matt just talked about in terms of the new AVM modules. And we also bootstrap your continuous delivery environment. So whether that's Azure DevOps or GitHub, we do that for you as well. So you just get that out of the box and something ready to go, simple, easy to use. Next slide, please. At a high level, if you're not already familiar with the accelerator, there's basically there's a few components that work together. So documentation is one of the most important parts of it, and we've got comprehensive documentation, which you can find in a link at the bottom down there. We then have what's called the bootstrap modules. So this is depending on whether you want to target GitHub, Azure DevOps, or we also offer a local file system if you want to then go and bootstrap your own CI/CD like GitLab or Bitbucket. We can support that too. And then we've got a concept of starter modules. So we've got starter modules for Bicep or Terraform. And the starter module is the Azure Verified modules for platform landing zone. That's what we're talking about there. And then there's a three-phase approach. We've got prereqs, so you've got to set up some subscriptions and some identities to get started. And then you basically run the PowerShell module to bootstrap based on the choices in your configuration files. And then finally, once you've done that bootstrapping, you'll have a continuous delivery pipeline ready to go. Just kick off that pipeline and it'll deploy your platform landing zone for you. And then it's all source controlled. If you've chosen one of those options, you can just iterate on that and continue to update your platform landing zone moving forwards. So obviously, the accelerator is an opinionated approach, right? We've baked in what we've based on our Azure landing zones guidance. We've built a module for you, composed everything together. If you want something more flexible, then you can obviously do it outside of the accelerator, but it takes you need to be skilled to do that, right? Next slide, please. So we've also, in this latest release, as well as introducing the Azure Verified modules, we've also added some new features to the accelerator that I just wanted to quickly talk about. The first one is previously the accelerator used a YAML file. And that YAML file, because it's not native Terraform, we had to convert that into JSON. So if you formatted that YAML file, ordered it nicely, put comments in it, they all disappeared as soon as it got into your version control system, which wasn't a great experience. So we've moved to use TF-vars, which is the native approach for Terraform. Now you get anything that you change in that configuration file is retained and it's moved into source control for you. So any comments you add, any changes you make, the ordering, everything is exactly the same as you put in the input to it. It also makes it a lot easier for us to test, which is an added benefit. The other thing we've added in the guidance documentation, we've added a phase 0. So I talked about the 3 phases of prereqs, bootstrap and run. We've now got a phase 0 as well, which is planning. And that helps to guide you through all the different decisions that you can potentially make around the accelerator. So deciding on private networking, things like that, right? We've put that into a guide to take you through it step by step. And we've also included a checklist. If you like using Excel, there's a checklist there that you can download and you can fill that out as you're going along. And then the final thing we've introduced as part of the Azure Verified modules for platform landing zone specifically, but it will also be for the new Bicep version as well is the concept of scenarios and options. So the scenarios are high-level architectures for the platform landing zone. You can see on the right here, there's a box that shows you what they are. I'm not going to go into depth in them now, but we offer like some standard out-of-the-box common scenarios that we see customers wanting. So whether they want an Azure firewall, whether they want vWAN, whether they want a third-party NVA, those type of options we offer as a high-level scenario. Once you've chosen a scenario, you can then choose options within that scenario. We've got what we see commonly asked for customers. So things like cost saving initiatives, like turning off the DDoS protection plan, renaming, is very common. People want to use their own naming convention. So we provide comprehensive instructions for each of those things, and you can go and make those changes to your configuration file before you deploy the platform landing zone. These aren't static, right? We're going to add to these over time as we get feedback from customers, but just at a high level, we've tried to make it as easy as possible to make these changes that we commonly see customers wanting to make. So, do we take questions now, or
should we cover the content? And if you could put them into Q&A, and then we'll read them out. I think we are quite pressed for time.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Can we have the next one, please? So, looping back, so we've got a lot of new updates. You might be asking, well, why have you done this? Ultimately, our largest customers said we didn't like the kind of monolithic approach of enterprise scale. So what we've done is we've created all these modules. So if you've got the skills, you can put these together however you like. However, we recognize that people liked the kind of opinionated approach of the CAF enterprise scale module, and that's what the accelerator is. But also it's got loads of other features in it as well. So much best practice baked into that accelerator, especially when it comes to CI/CD and using identities without shared secrets, and using all that kind of stuff, private networking and state file management. It's really, really good, and it gets you going really, really quickly. We're also reaching the limits of what we could do in a Terraform module. So with Azure policy is actually really quite complicated when it comes to working out what role assignments you need for the policies that you deploy if not exist and things like that. So actually it just got, I did try like 18 months, 2 years ago to kind of re-architect this using HCL and Terraform, and I just kept getting into cycle errors and all sorts. It just came to me that this wasn't really possible anymore. So hence the provider approach, essentially. That's the reason we've done it. By separating out the stuff into the library as well. So if we go to the next slide, I think that's the library slide. Yeah, so essentially we've decoupled the policies from the thing that deploys the policies. And the reason we've done this is because previously you had to, it was a real pain. Whenever we released a new version of CAF Enterprise Scale, you'd also get a load of new policies. But if you didn't want the new policies, or vice versa, if you wanted the new policies but you didn't want to update the module because extra risk for you, then you couldn't do that. And it was actually quite complicated to, take the configuration back to the old version. So the library is a construct that allows us to store Azure landing zone architectures in terms of the policies they need, the management group structures, and the policies that are assigned to those management groups. And the idea is it's agnostic. Now, at the moment, only the Terraform implementation uses it. However, there are plans for other implementations to also use it as well. The nice thing is it's completely extensible. We've just had a question in the Q&A that says, well, how do we do Azure landing zones in Azure China? Now, we can't test this because we don't have access to Azure China, but the point about is the libraries that we can have another architecture in here that says this is ALZ in Mooncake in China, and we can also have one for US Gov. We can have one for all sorts, right? And the nice thing is you can just pick that, and then it will just deploy the policies that work in that environment. Also, it's extensible that you can have dependencies between different things in the library. So we've got things like sovereign landing zones in there now, which is an extension to ALZ, which allows for confidential compute workloads and mandates confidential compute workloads in certain management groups. And that builds on top of Azure landing zones by adding these extra management groups. But there's a dependency between the two. So you as the consumer of this just says, I want sovereign landing zones. And the library kind of just works out what policy assets it needs, builds it all up for you, and then it makes it into a deployable architecture. The nice thing is about this is that we can test it as well. So we've got the kind of library that sits behind the Terraform provider. We actually use in our pull requests to make sure that the stuff in the library is actually deployable and kind of makes sense. And yeah, so you got essentially ultimately get more reliable deployments. So if we progress on, so yeah, to summarize, there's two approaches here. The first is the accelerator, which Jared mentioned and highly recommended, unless you know what you're doing. You can do it yourself, and our largest customers will be doing this. You just need to know what you're doing. You need to be comfortable with Terraform. You need to be comfortable constructing a module architecture and pulling together the dependencies in that. If you really want to do that, you can have a look at the starter modules in the accelerator and actually kind of deconstruct that yourself and then do it your own way. As I said, the documentation site is the best place to start. Jared's just posted the link in the chat, but the Azure landing zones documentation is now live. We'd love your feedback on it. Please raise issues. Also, the library has its own documentation site. So if you want to know more about the library, we are going to get around to doing a YouTube video on it, but it also has a static doc site on it, which you can learn more about how it's constructed and what sort of assets are in there and kind of how it works. If we go on. So yeah, to summarize really, the benefits are the provider essentially gives you more reliable deployments. It correctly calculates properly calculates the role assignments that you need, and make sure your architecture is sane before you even try and deploy it. So the idea is you find out sooner that something isn't going to work. The library means you're extensible. You can, if you want to update the policy version, you can just change the provider config, and then so when we do this new policy drop that Sash has just released, you'll just be able to update that library reference, and then you'll all of a sudden deploy the new policies. We also use the AZ API provider now extensively in the ALZ pattern module. The reason we do that is because I don't know if you've ever found that you might have deploying resources at management group scope can sometimes lead to problems where you find that you can't assign a policy that you just the definition of which you just created. You can't, you get all these RBAC errors and all sorts. There's loads of cool stuff built into there's loads of good stuff built into the new AZ API provider around retries. So we can now retry on certain errors, which means that you get a consistent deployment rather than having to rerun Terraform apply and hope maybe ending up in an inconsistent state. So there's loads, and it's also a lot faster as well. So yeah, loads of cool stuff with AZ API. And there's new stuff coming in the accelerator as well, as Jared mentioned. So you now get Bastion and all sorts of cool stuff. So migration. What's happening to CAF Enterprise Scale? It's still supported for existing customers. However, we highly recommend that new customers and greenfield deployments and those migrating do not use CAF Enterprise Scale. We will continue to support CAF Enterprise Scale. We'll be putting the new policy sets in there. But over time, we will be focusing more on the Azure Verified Modules stuff. So in terms of feature requests, things like that, new stuff like Azure Virtual Network Manager, right? We're not going to put that into CAF Enterprise Scale. It just won't be an option. So yeah, we are going to provide migration guidance. Essentially, management groups and policy. It's deploy a new hierarchy, move your subscriptions over. So that way you can test it in a non-breaking way. Moving subscriptions into management groups, as you know, is a non-breaking change for workloads. You can continue to deploy workloads while you're doing this migration, so you don't need to stop anything. For the critical resources like your networking and your central log analytics, we are going to provide migration tooling, and there'll be a Terraform state migration into the AVM modules. That does not exist yet, so hence the only migration path at the moment is for management groups and policies. Keep managing your network and your log analytics workspace with the CAF Enterprise Scale module for the time being, and we will have more to share on that in the coming months. Cool. Next slide, please.
I think it's over to me at this stage.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, thanks Jared and Matt there for the Terraform stuff update. Like, there's loads and loads of stuff that we could spend. We spend like a whole hour just on Terraform and the updates. So I highly recommend you go and read like the blog posts and all the links that we've shared in the chat. There will be more coming. please just keep raising issues on the GitHub site if you've got questions. That will help us work out what content's missing and what we need to create. There are a couple in the chat, Jared and Matt, if you want to just go and have a look at those. And yeah, with that, we'll move into some Bicep updates. So Zach leads our Bicep efforts, but is based in the US, so he's fast asleep right now. So I'm going to cover for him. We just heard about how Terraform has moved to the new AVM-based approach, and it would be very much silly if we didn't do the same for Bicep. So some of you are already aware of this. We've got this work underway. We are quite close. Any of you are keeping an eye on that AVM repo will notice that I raised, I don't know, 20 module requests last night because we're getting ready to the stage of publishing them. So all of these are coming for Bicep as well. Again, going to be using the library as well so that we can easily maintain the module versions and update from the policy refreshes from the library. So we've got one source of truth. So all great work going on there. We are going to be ready around sort of the March timeframe, sort of the end of March, for an MVP. So if you are interested, scan the QR code, click on the link, and nominate yourself in a form, and we can be in touch nearer the date to kick the tires and give us some more feedback, and we'd really appreciate that. But alongside that, ALZ Bicep still lives and breathes, and we still maintain it. And as you can see, Zach's busy still resolving issues and adding new things in left, right, and center. So the 0.20.2 release was out a couple of weeks ago. And we're still carrying on there. So if you want to use Bicep today, please carry on with ALZ Bicep. We again will provide migration guidance. It'll be a little bit less painful than Terraform because we don't have state to worry about, but that's a pro and a con depending on which way you look about it. So we also will provide migration guidance when we get there, but that'll be after the MVP, and we'll do a GA announcement once we're happy, and then migration guidance will come. So very similar to how the Terraform approach will be going. So lots of exciting stuff on the Bicep side as well. And just to recap, we will be moving towards AVM. And with that, I am going to hand over to Saif and Simona to give us an update on all the cool new features that we spoke about last time and what the latest is what the latest is on them. So Saif or Simona.
Simona, do you want to start?
Oops, I was in mute, so apologies.
No
Sorry. Are you going to share the screen or shall I share it?
I can move to the next slide.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So my name is Simona Tarantula, and I'm responsible for the networking part together with Saif and Jack. So as Sasha mentioned earlier, we are adding a great service to our ALZ, which is the Azure Virtual Network Manager. So we are already adding to the reference implementation to the portal, and we will be working with the Terraform and Bicep modules. And also, we are mapping basically all the feature that AVM has into the Azure landing zone. So we're starting with the security admin rules, and we will move into the other services such as IPAM, which I invite you to check the blog post that we posted last October. And also we will again supported Bicep and Terraform pretty soon. So we are working to map all the single feature together with UDR management and then NSG management, which will be very helpful. So we invite you to join the discussions. How do you think that could be mapping together with the ALZ? We also had in a new Azure Bastion. So we checked the documents and we realized that they needed to be a little bit refreshed. And so together with that, we add the new SKU for the premium and the and with the private IP only, and also with the developer SKU, which is at the moment available in certain regions, Central US, East US, North and West US, and then also North Europe. So check that. And we also added the virtual one implementation together with Bastion. We refreshed that article. Also, an important point on the September 30, 2025, the default Amba access for the virtual machine will be retired. And so with that, we add basically to the documentation, and we also add the ability to deploy NAT gateway in the landing zone via subscription banding. Saif, up to you. Shall I continue? Or you
Yes,
want to
thank
take
you,
over?
Simona.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, let me take control. And on the part of networking refresh, we've also looked at the DNS guidance that we have in ALZ, and we thought that most probably DNS needs its own home, so that we also moved the two articles that we currently have for DNS into its own section. So this also is going to trigger more guidance on DNS that we're going to work on. I think Jack is going to talk about some of it next. We've added also some guidance on the private DNS resolver in those articles, and we're currently working on implementing private DNS resolver in the different accelerators. It's already in the Terraform one. It's coming in also across the other accelerators very soon. We're going to talk about multi-region private link DNS guidance. It's a very big pain point for our customers. Jack is going to touch upon it in a sec. Also, some of the other small incremental features that we're adding is with Azure Firewall going forward, all of the new features that are coming are going to require using a management NIC and a management subnet. So this is something also that we're going to add some guidance for, and we're going to add this into our accelerators. There are other networking features like Express Route Metro guidance. This has been already added into our docs. So if you would like to leverage this feature, check our Express Route docs. We're also working on the migration of NSG flow logs to net flow logs. As you know, NSG flow logs are going to be retired in 2027. So we're also working on adding some guidance proactively on that. Also, we're looking into subnet peering as well with the product group to see once this is ready, we're going to also add some guidance and expose it also in our accelerators. The one final ask is if there are any other features that you think that are relevant, please add them to the discussion. And to know the latest from us on those kind of features, please check the ALZ roadmap because we update it on a regular basis. Thank you, and hand it over to Jack.
Amazing. Thank you, Saif and Simona, for those updates on those features. Busy working away on lots and lots of things, as you can see. So stay tuned for more updates. So as Dave mentioned, this topic is a really big pain point for our customers, being how do we handle private DNS for private link across multiple regions, right? And some of you may have been in this space for a little while, but it's an important one that we cover. First of all, we want to make this very, very clear. This is a work in progress. This isn't our official guidance. We do have docs on this already. They're still valid. But this current thinking and chain thought is still very much a work in progress. So it's a complex topic. I wanted to share with you to not ignore the fact that we're trying to hide from this. We're absolutely not. We are trying to work on this, and we've got meetings planned with product groups and all sorts of stuff. But this is not official guidance as of today. You can certainly use it as inspiration and make your own decisions from it, but we're sharing where we are with it today. And the question really comes down to this, right? Do we deploy a single set of DNS zones centrally in the connectivity description in a single region for private link if we've got multiple regions? So if we've got like 3 regions, do we just have all of our DNS zones in one of the regions, like a primary region, and link them all there? And that's sort of like the general ALZ guidance from the original when we pushed the guidance. Or do we have a set of those private link DNS zones in every region that we have? So we have the same resources and the same namespaces in multiple regions. What's the right answer? And this is something that has been ongoing for many, many years. And some of you may have read Adam Stewart guidance on this, or like white paper on the thoughts of this, where I borrowed these diagrams from because they explain it better than I can and do it. And a lot of us have inputted to that document that's on Adam's GitHub repo, and he is involved in these conversations as well, right? So we're already chatting with him and others in the same space to try and work out the best option. But hopefully this just tries to add a bit of picture to the two options here. So on the left, we've got the centralized option, so a single set of private link DNS zones. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a diagram where you're showing two regions, each with their own set of private link, private DNS zones. Now you may think, hey, well, it's easy, right? Everybody's saying we should go multi-region. We should just go to the right-hand side, right, and have a set of zones per region. But there be dragons, right? It's not a plain sailing scenario, especially when most customers that we deal with have on-premise hybrid resolution to consider as well. Like, how do things from on-premise resolve endpoints in each of these regions? Because they're the same namespace, you can't just forward to both regions, because you might get an answer from one, but then that A record might not exist in another. So you'll get an X domain, and the client connection will break. So you need to consider, like, it's not that straightforward. And there aren't services out of the box today that help you do NX domain forwarding and redirection from Azure. There are certainly other third-party products that can help you do that, but not from a native perspective. So this is where we're thinking, right? And there is a lot of content on this slide, and I'll try and get through it as quickly as possible. But when we consider all things, what we're really saying, or where we're believing, is for most customers, 80-90% of you, a single set of zones in a single region is probably going to be the best option, because it makes the automation a lot simpler. Policies just work out of the box from ALZ. You don't need to do anything with resource selectors and making multiple policy assignments and changing resource IDs for DNS zones. And the one risk that a lot of people are worried about is, hey, what happens if that primary region where we put the zones goes down? What happens if we can't update it? We've done lots and lots of investigation as a team here. Myself, Matt, Paul, Simona, like, all of us have been involved in conversation with the product group on, like, what happens to DNS zones in the event of a region down, because they are a global resource. Now, from a querying perspective, the data plane, that's confirmed. There will be no impact, and you'll be able to get a query response. But as to whether you'll be able to update the A records or update the DNS zone links and virtual network links and all those sort of things, from what we understand, you won't be able to do those via the portal, Bicep, or ARM, because they require metadata from the resource group, which may be unavailable because the region might be offline. But if you're doing a direct REST call, so you're doing like PowerShell or the CLI or Terraform, and you're doing a direct call to the individual resource that you need, that should work, because that's not a tracked resource, it's a proxy resource in terms of ARM, and you should be able to make that direct call because it doesn't require the resource group metadata to make that change. Obviously, this isn't something we can very easily test either, because we can't just take a region offline. I'm pretty sure our customers will be unhappy. So this is based on our current understanding and something we're still working to refine and understand. The other part of this, some other cons, is it doesn't use the SDN in Azure in the most efficient way, because it could be that your storage account over here, so let's say that these DNS zones are in region A, and let's say that you want to access this storage account, where if your on-prem resolution comes here, gets a DNS response from some zones over here from a resolver, it's then got to use layer 3 to route over to the other side, right? So like, you're making a cross connection, not making the most efficient use of the RSDN. It's not the end of the world. It's built to work like that. Like, we can handle it. But for you networking purists, that may not be something you're a fan of. And then the other option, which is doing zones per region, this is something that could be there, could be an option, but it does come with some more dragons. So you do have multiple sets of zones to manage, and they have to be in different resource groups because they've got the same name. So that's a first requirement, but that's fine. If any of you are using private DNS, private endpoint DNS zone groups, you'll know that there's a limitation that you can only have one DNS zone group for the same DNS namespace. So you can't have a single private endpoint in one region having a zone group for both, or however many regions DNS zones that you've got. So that now means you have to manually, you can automatically create it in maybe the primary region. So you can automatically register this private endpoint in its region's DNS zones via policy, which we provide in ALZ. But if you want it to also appear in the secondary region, because you need that region to be able to resolve it as well, you're going to need to build a system that automatically migrates or synchronizes the DNS records between both zones, whether that's event-based, messaging based, whether that's a random function that you write to shit sync and shit synchronize these records. But that's something that you're going to have to build and maintain, right? There's nothing from Azure today that has that built in, and it's not an offering we have off the shelf. Policy automation gets more complicated. I mentioned resource selectors that you'd have to start using. Not the end of the world, but it's another thing that you have to be aware of and know how it works. The hybrid and on-premise scenario is very complicated, and especially if you don't sync the records, because then you need to handle NX domains responses, and that's something that our products don't provide NX domain forwarding or redirection out of the box today. So that's another thing you need to think about. It does make an efficient use of the software-defined network, though. That's there. And it does also give you the ability to update DNS zones if a region is offline by any method. So that is one pro, but it's, you know, it's playing that risk game. Like, touch wood, region offline events aren't that common, and therefore you're planning, if you're thinking about the right hand scenario, which is very complex and advanced, you've got a lot of you're doing a lot of work for a maybe scenario, which we're doing everything on the Microsoft side to avoid ever happening, versus keep staying to the left, which stays simple, but there is a risk that, okay, in that scenario we might not be able to make any updates to our DNS zones. There are alternative ways around that, right? Like, it might not be the biggest problem at that stage. You could just fail back to public endpoints. That's one option. Yeah, it might be in a DR scenario, you might just want to be getting your service back online. Or it be, hey, we just recreate the DNS zones in the secondary region should we need them, and have some automation sitting in our DR runbook that does all of that and gets us going again, right? They're very simple fixes that don't require this very, very complex architecture and, you know, all these other systems that you'd have to build to make it completely autonomous during a region outage event. So, as I say, this is our working guidance. This is not done and dusted. This isn't, you know, this is what Jack says, this is what the LZ team recommends, go do this. I really want to hear from you, right? Like, I know this, many of you have got a working solution today, or you've done something where you may be thinking of changing the approach that you originally decided upon. And I want to come and speak to some of you. So if you are in a scenario, please do fill in this form. So aka.ms/alz/mrplpdns, so multi-region private link private DNS /form. And I will come and review those responses and have a chat with you there. So please do go and fill in the form if you're going through this, or you've solved it already. I'm really interested to speak to you on this. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Paul.
Waited an hour and 4 minutes for me to speak. Thanks everyone, and for those who are still with us, thanks Jack. So hi everybody, my name's Paul Grimley. I'm the Azure Landing Zone Technical PM. I'm a white male from the UK, brown hair, short brown hair, glasses, and a beard, and I'm wearing a black hoodie. So today I just want to touch on a quick note, something that I've talked about in previous sessions, and obviously the title's nice and catchy for you, so hopefully I'm going to keep you for a couple more minutes. So this is kind of a slide I presented to you, so this won't be new to you. We announced a blog last kind of middle of last calendar year, around our approach, probably a little bit before actually, but we announced some updates to how we're going to approach resiliency. So resiliency is one of our key priorities in improving our customers' experience in Azure. And we've been going through that process for quite a while now. We've been doing some updates. So as you can see, we've scribed out phase 1, which was kind of doing the kind of Portland and Terraform and Bicep accelerators. Now, phase 2 was a little bit more complex, because that meant that we had to go into the modules that we have and be able to kind of change from a non-resilient to a resilient SKU for some of our things that we deploy. Now, what's happened is, what we said was we would do that by the end of the year, early this year. Now, as we've just announced, as Matt and Jared have been talking about, the new release based on AVM for Terraform, we've had a change of heart here for mainly for your benefit as customers and partners here, is that recognizing that we're introducing a big change by putting these zone redundant changes into those modules. What we're going to do is we're going to switch gears to look at the new modules as being resilient by default, which they are. And as part of the migration guidance that Matt and Jared are going to lead on here, and Zach will for the Bicep piece, we're going to look at the kind of taking those two steps and making them into one. So as you transition brownfield customers from the existing modules that they're using, that we will be looking to deprecate once this migration guidance is out, we'll be wanting that to be part of that transition. So you can kind of transition to the new modules and look to do that resiliency at the same time as well as you move forward. So keep an eye on these forums, with these community calls. We'll be talking about this more as the year goes on. But we want to say that the kind of initial sort of communication that we had on phase 2 has changed, and that's based on making sure that your customers and you don't have to go through a two-hop approach where you do it currently in the current modules, then you have to move to the new modules as we announce that kind of deprecation notice in the months ahead. So please keep with us on that. Look out for LinkedIn updates from me and the team, and we'll share more on that. All right, and then quickly want to talk a little bit about Sentinel. I'm going to hand over to Jack halfway through here. So I'm hearing a lot of conversations from various parts of the organization within Microsoft, from our customers, from issues that are raised on GitHub around Sentinel. Where does Sentinel fit in an Azure landing zone? So I wanted to share, we have been looking at this. We wrote a spec led by Brandon, who you've seen on these calls previously. We've put lots of comments in it. And we have come to a point where we're like, okay, we're hearing patterns that are being built by our customers and partners that we don't have in our landing zone today. So what we want to do is we want to harness that information that you folks in the community can help bring to us and help shape our next steps on that. So I'm going to hand over to Jack, who's going to talk a little bit about this further, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you, Jack.
Awesome, thanks, Paul. So yeah, I think as Paul says, right, like I think a lot of this comes from maybe a little bit of misunderstanding and misclarity from us, or lack of clarity from our side on what Sentinel we actually do for Sentinel in ALZ. For those of you who don't know, effectively all we've done in ALZ is enable Sentinel on the central workspace. Like that's all we've been doing. If you've chosen to do that, right, and you've left the booleans enabled, we haven't done any connector configuration, analytics rules, anything like that. We've literally just enabled the Sentinel solution upon the workspace, security insights, if you're used to seeing it in the API. And maybe, okay, that's a good thing, but actually what we've been hearing from a lot of customers is by having the same workspace used for Sentinel can actually bloat our costs, and it's not related to all the security logs that we actually are interested in, and we don't want to be paying the Sentinel ingestion charges for logs that are maybe platform logs, right, and diagnostic settings. Some of them we may want, but not all of them. And it really is a choice, right? It depends on the customer. Some customers want absolutely everything, and they want all the security teams to have access to everything easily. And that makes complete sense. Our current guidance works for that. But some don't. Some want to split this up. Some want to get more control over it. So there are a number of questions that we're going through, and that spec document that Paul showed sort of goes into some of these. And we've got an opinion on where we think we're going with this, but instead of biasing the community, we want to hear from you directly on what do you think and where do you go. So we do have answers to these and what we believe, but we want some validation or some counterpoints towards that. So the main questions are like, do we need a separate log analytics workspace for Sentinel? Right? Okay. If we are going down that route, do we need a separate subscription for security and Sentinel? And then taking that one step further, like, okay, we've got another separate subscription. Do we need a separate management group? What's the options there? Like, do we need one? Why do we need one? And then once we've got answers to all those questions, it really comes down to, should ALZ do anything to Sentinel, right? Like today we deploy the solution on the workspace, but should we go further? Should we do more? Or should we just provide placement guidance and the platform prerequisites, like getting the subscription created, maybe creating another management group and putting it in the right place, and then leaving it to the Sentinel team or the security team within your organization to go and deploy and manage that Sentinel workspace in however they want to choose and however they want to, because that's really another application landing zone for them to go and deliver. It just obviously is a platform service. There's things out there like the Sentinel all-in-one accelerator, which is provided by the product group, which is an ARM template that does lots of Sentinel configuration for you out of the box. Do we just deploy that and link to it and automatically deploy that out of the portal experience and other experiences that we have to deploy? So there's lots of questions in this space. And we are looking to make decisions on this within sort of the next few months, and start making changes towards our guidance to do that. So what we are asked to again to you all in the community is, there's a GitHub discussion for this issue on the repo. Some of you eagle-eyed people may have seen this last week because I created it. But please go and set this, set up, go to this discussion, post in there, add your thoughts. We've put all the questions in there. Please just go and answer all the questions. You can copy and paste all the questions out. I've provided it in text format, and then just provide your answers in line. Right, so that's absolutely your choice, and we would love to hear from you. So yeah, please go and fill that in. We want to hear from you and what you're doing, and yeah, we look forward to seeing an active discussion there in the community. So please go and post. And with that, I think I'm going back to you, Paul.
You are. All right. Just one final one before we close out. I'm excited to share something that me and Jack have been working on with the team. So some of you may be familiar, if you're in the partner space, with the Azure Connection program, where you can connect, and some customers as well, get invited by product groups. This is something that's been going on for years, and you can ask those kind of really in-depth questions direct, and the commitment from the product group is they will give you time back to be able to respond to those. So we want to tap into that as an Azure Landing Zone team. So basically what we're looking at is building like an ALZ influencers group. So we're going with the trendy kind of wording here, like the social media aspect. So those who are kind of ambassadors for Azure Landing Zone. And so there's a few things in here that I want to kind of cover on that. So the purpose is to gain insights, right, from a trusted group. So those who we see on LinkedIn, there's loads of you who are absolutely, giving us great reviews and so forth, or reposting even this session, right, saying, hey, come and join this. This is a great session for you to learn. Thank you is what I'd say there. And we want to harness that further. So this group is to kind of look at those influencers who you believe and we believe are adding positive impact to us, so that we can kind of use it as two-way communication to be able to kind of say, hey, we're thinking of this. Is it a no? And we want to do that in a safe space before we kind of do that wider blast radius, and get some really kind of depth knowledge and feedback from a wider team. We know that we don't know everything. You are as valuable to this call as we are by giving us your feedback. As I can see, the stream of questions that are coming are fantastic. It really challenges us to stay on our toes. And this is what this is to do, and help us drive that even further. I do want to stress it's not a support channel, so continue using the GitHub links that you've seen firing in the chat as we're going through this. It's not linked to the MVP program, so I want to stress that now. It won't be something you can formally kind of say. However, this is a pilot. If it goes well, we could probably look to kind of work on that space. There's no commitment there. It's very early, but we're learning. We want to kind of we want to do this, and early feedback has been good from those we spoke to about creating these kind of groups. Criteria: if you've previously contributed to Azure Landing Zone, like you'll see, please do a pull request. They're really valuable to us, right? It helps scale what we do. Like even things like broken links. If you find the link that's right, put a PR in, because we'll thank you for it, and we'll appreciate you putting those PRs in. Are you an criteria again? Are you an ALZ ambassador? Do you do you kind of promote us, and that will help stand you in good stead, because we want that amplification. So and also the final one: do you see yourself as an ALZ expert? Now that's a dangerous thing to kind of say, but if you're confident that you know ALZ really well, that's also a reason why you should think about this. So there's a link on the bottom right hand side here, aka.ms/ALZ/influencers/nominate. Go to that, fill in a quick form for us, and we'll look into the nominations. I do want to stress as I finalize here, we will triage the applications. There are no guarantees on entry, and we will start with a very select few, because the people you see here is the Azure Landing Zone team, and we cover a lot of many things. So we have to manage the scale of this. We don't want to have 100 people in here and not be able to service that team, and then it becomes a bit of a no-go. So we want to start small, try and be successful, and we'll work on assess that as we move forward. So recognise we're way over, and I did warn, so apologies in the chat for those in the chat. I did warn, but on the call we didn't get a chance. Apologies, we're 16 minutes over. But I'm going to hand back to Jack to do I think I'm closing out now, or you're closing out, Jack, and then we're good.
Yeah, no, I think we're very close to the end. So, yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for sticking with us. Seeing good attendance right towards the end. Just want to announce the next one. So, the next one of these will be on the 7th of May. It will be back on a America's time zone friendly slot. Being this one's on an APAC friendly time slot. But again, they're always recorded and shared. So, please keep an eye on that. The issue 1901 is the one where you can post things that you'd like us to talk about on there. And obviously that'll remain open right up until the day of the event. So no rush to fill it now, but if you've got slots and things you want, then please do fill in. And with that, I just want to say huge thank you to all of our speakers today. A lot of content, and mostly a big thank you for you for sticking with us and listening to our ramblings and all the things we've been up to in the ALZ world. And we will catch you all in May. But please do keep actively contributing to the community, fill in those forms, and the recordings and the slides will be up for this by the end of today. So thanks everybody again. Thanks to all the speakers and have a great rest of your day.